What's going on, everybody? This is Brent0331. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I have a very special show today, and it's a very good friend of mine, a combat veteran that I served and went down range with. And he just has an unbelievably amazing story. And unfortunately, not all fairy tales end in the right manner, right? There's always sometimes something comes up, and we have a story just like that. And it is incredible the service that this man, this guy I call a dear friend and a brother, the stuff he went through, and the just again remarkable service that he had, and the way it kind of came to an end is just ridiculous. And I don't want to blow it. I definitely want to bring him in here and tell his story. And I encourage you guys to hang around for the end because it is just a remarkable story. So here he is, Lieutenant Adam SCHWARZE'S, United States Navy, and formerly United States Marine Corps. Welcome, brother.
Retired.
Retired, yes. It's
retired as of 1 March.
Freshly retired.
Yeah, only took 3 years to get here.
Oh my gosh. So you and I have been talking for a while, and we absolutely wanted to do this, but we just had to wait until you were officially retired. And we thought you were supposed to retire a while back, and I was even going to fly up there for it. And then something came up, and we'll get to that. We'll talk all about that. So,
yeah, well, I appreciate the very kind intro. It was an honor to serve with you. I know we go back 21 years.
Yep.
Yeah, I would like to do the little spoiler read off, the so what. If people want to hang out for 60 to 90 minutes, however long just to get to the end, I'd like to give a little spoiler alert, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so this is what we'll get into is about a 2.5 year long process, but the most recent documentation, the so what from our whole conversation tonight is want us to break bread. I know we really haven't connected in a hot second. But where I stand. I'm a very common sense, pragmatic dude. I'm not an extremist. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just a very honest broker. Well, 10 years as an enlisted Marine. I've lived a lifetime of honor. I thought it was all fairy tales in the military. I was having a great fairy tale career up until my 18-year mark. But the so what is I was kicked out of the SEAL teams after being, a stellar performer for 18 and a half years. And it was really nefarious in how it was done. It was essentially, I was going to get out and run for office. I was going to run for Congress in the last year's midterms. And the Secretary of the Navy got involved, and there was election meddling by the Secretary of the Navy, by the Chief of Naval Operations, and the military that utilized the Navy SEALs to do it. I have all the documentation, so we can go through them all tonight. Also, I'll give you the link so you can put them up, where you post the video, so people can just go to the Dropbox and see all these documents. But, the last letter is going to, it's already been to the SECNAV as of March 1st, but essentially I was taken to a hearing, a trial. It wasn't court-martial, it was a board of inquiry, where essentially they asked, a board of senior ranking military officers had to find out, hey, all these terrible accusations that the military has said I've done for the last, 2 years, far departures from the military doctrine, are these things true? And after, 21 years and, 9 specific deployments in over 80 countries visited throughout my time in the military, they tried to take away my retirement. They tried to take away my pension. They tried to say that I was a dirtbag. They tried to say that, surprisingly to you, I never went to combat. And I wasn't a good, Marine. I wasn't a good SEAL officer. All these just, truths, which is the ironic thing is these are all false official statements now that they made. They made, we lost count. We're, my lawyers and I and, my family were putting these documents together at over 60. But my career was essentially ended because I said I was making false statements that panned out to be not true at all. But so that, I'll read this. I'm sure you can put up the document, but it's one of those enclosures sent you, but it's following the no basis finding on all notifications. I respectfully request that the Secretary of the Navy reinstate my SEAL warfare designator. through a life dedicated to selfless service at the cost of immense sacrifice to both my family and me. As an infantry Marine and as a Naval Special Warfare Officer, I've made significant contributions which have ensured the security of the United States of America. It pains me greatly that, in spite of my service to this country, some of the greatest suffering I have endured is at the hands of the same government that I spent a lifetime serving and protecting. Over the last 2 years, I've suffered immensely because of the repeated prejudgments brought on by the Navy, which has been acting with judicial impunity. I find myself writing to request the Secretary of the Navy reinstate my SEAL designator following the no basis findings on all notifications by the Board of Inquiry. This letter is my 6th correspondence on these matters and serves to further the record that, 1, against all logic and to the detriment of both national security and the American taxpayer, I was held captive, literally held captive, like Mandela style, in the military longer than any service obligations. And 2, I have had my clearly documented honorable lifelong service to the United States of America disavowed by the Navy in order to achieve the end state of the same goal, that I was forcibly retained by the military so that I could not run for federal office against the party of the current executive administration upon separation. And upon separation is really key there, and we'll get into that. Of crucial importance, I was willing to sacrifice my pension in order to separate early because I believe it critical that our military and politics be decoupled in order to retain the faith of the American people. And you'll hear that line in numerous documents throughout the night. Not only were my repeated requests to resign and retire denied, but I was illegally retained when the Navy appropriated my accrued vacation days. In the military, we call it terminal leave, but a lot of vacation days saved that they stole illegally. I was then subjugated to a kangaroo court of non-judicial proceedings and continued to suffer through numerous false official statements made by the Naval Special Warfare Command, as detailed throughout the rest of these enclosures. I was never given an opportunity to defend myself until a Naval Board of Inquiry was convened to investigate these matters, several months after I'd already been sent to captain's mast and nearly 3 years after I'd first attempted to separate from the Navy. In the Board of Inquiry, members received more than 1,700 pages of documentary evidence, 188 digital files, and an hour and 45 minutes of video discovery, heard from 5 fact and character witnesses before unanimously finding no basis on all of the notifications for which I was forced to show cause. Following the board members' resounding declaration of my innocence, I request that the Secretary of the Navy verdict be honored and restore my SEAL warfare designator so that I may be buried in proper uniform with correct honors and decorations at the Fort Snelling National Cemetery. This request will not allow me to regain the years lost this ordeal, nor will it correct the thousands of dollars in earned critical skills compensation that my family was deprived of as a result of the unjust revocation of my warfare qualification. Granting this request will also not increase my retirement benefits directly, but it will allow me to attain scholarships and assistance from nonprofits associated with the special operations community. More importantly, however, it will bring me peace to know that my years spent working towards wearing that trident were not for nothing. It was the absolute pleasure of my life to wear the SEAL warfare designator in service of my country. I only ask that I allowed to wear it in the next one. Reinstating my trident will save the government and the military additional resources and time in conducting further hearings and correction boards into this matter. Moreover, it is simply the right thing to do. Therefore, I humbly request that the Secretary of the Navy take the honorable action by supporting the Board of Inquiry's decision and reinstate my SEAL designator. There we are. That's the so what up front. We'll get to that, but essentially the ball is in the second half's corner. I do allege conspiracy. I do allege election meddling. The good news is I have all the documents to back it up so I can walk whoever, all of your followers on target. I'm really sad that it got to this point. Naval Special Warfare now is going to have a bunch of pie on their face as soon as this all goes public because, again, of all the false official statements, I am, I'm going to take flack from the right on this. Again, I'm very pragmatic. I think that it's very important that our military and our politics be, decoupled. That's why we've had such great high faith in the military for really its entirety, where, the public faith in Congress is so low because everything is just this political theater. And I'll also say that, if you're going to make a statement about, the stolen election or something like that, being a pragmatic person, I want to see evidence. So I'm not saying that, the 2020 election was or was not stolen, seen evidence that it was stolen. But I think that the bigger point is that it makes it very important that we have confidence and faith in our elections. And we don't have that right now. Both parties, Hillary Clinton was claiming that, the election was stolen in a previous election. So both sides are claiming, there's election, issues. And I think that we really need to fix as a country. But in my case right here, I'm not saying there's an election stolen. There's election meddling. The baby was killed in the crib. I was never able to retire. I was able to get out and run. And that's what I really want to walk you through tonight with all these documents.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I mean, unbelievably large pack that we got to unpack tonight. So, if you don't mind, man, let's just go back to the beginning and go back to our roots, and that way we can just kind of tell the audience like how you progressed in your military career and how our paths crossed. And if you don't mind, man, can we go back and just, as a young man, like what made you want to join the U.S. military?
Yeah,
specifically the United States Marine Corps.
I know this is actually why you're gonna hate me, because I never told you this story. So I didn't even want to go into the Marines. I've actually always wanted to be a SEAL. I know you're gonna hate me so bad, but it's a decent story. I didn't know what a Marine was.
This interview's done. This is
I did, brother. So I grew up watching videos of like the SEALs in Vietnam, working with like the ARG and doing other entity type things. I was always just fascinated by that. And you're a machine gunner, bro. You're larger than life. You're like 6'10", and I'm like 180. Like you're a giant. So you're like those dudes, like the SEALs. I was seeing those videos, just 4 dudes alone and unafraid. Beyond the tip of the spear. I was always fascinated with that. Fast forward to my senior year of high school, I was in the process of trying to enlist into the Navy to go SEALs. 9/11 happened. That was my senior year. And they're not, the Navy is not like the Marines when it comes to recruiting. Certainly all the ship banks closed their offices. So I was in the process of trying to enlist, and then they were closed for like weeks. And then I was waiting outside for those guys to open up one day, and all of a sudden this giant horse of a man about your size in a band costume comes up, and he's like, "Hey, what are you waiting for?" I'm like, "The Navy office to open up." What for? I was trying to enlist to be a SEAL. He's like, "Well, they've closed ever since 9/11. Have you ever thought about being a Marine?" "What's a Marine?" "Well, let me tell you, son, come into my office. This dude was a giant gunny in his dress blues, a giant horse. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but certainly within 30 minutes, hey, we're first to fight. Look at all this history we bring to the table. Honor, courage, commitment, yellow footprints. You want to fight? I guarantee I can get you downrange faster than the SEALs can." Well, this is interesting. So, like an idiot, well, not like an idiot, it's great. I owe the Marine Corps really everything. September 11th, 9/11, 2001, October 12th, 1 month later, 1 month, 1 day, my 18th birthday, I raised my hand as an infantry option in the Marine Corps. And true to that recruiter's word, I was on the yellow footprints down at MCRD San Diego 2 weeks after I graduated high school, and I was on a ship for our first deployment that same year we graduated, which is crazy to think about now. Like, not even a year of training, we were off to get some.
Yeah, I mean it's nuts. Our generation coming to the Marine Corps, it was just recruit training, school of infantry, fleet, freaking on a ship going to fucking war.
Yeah,
and I mean that's what most guys in our generation did. Why they joined. Guys weren't joining the service during those time for college benefits. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, it is interesting to see. That I guess we feel so old and crusty now. Just the gamer generation. I don't know. I mean, even the SEALs and the Marines, just there's been so much cultural change since, I feel like just this old guy that doesn't even really connect to either of the communities anymore, just because they're just so different. And I know that every generation, when they look at the next group, like, oh, you're softer. I'm not necessarily saying they're softer, just different. We were quieter. We had different motivations for joining. We had different dynamics to our brotherhoods. And I don't know if it was necessarily healthy or not. It was just different.
It was absolutely different climate. And I'm not one to shit on the newer generations because, you look back to like World War II and it's like the guys, that Lance Corporal PFC hitting the beach on Iwo Jima, like he was the new Corps Marine of his era, right?
Yeah,
the freaking dudes that fought in the Philippines are probably looking at him like, oh, look at these fucking new generation Marines, with their guts.
That's was at some point a new guy.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, and this will be very important because we're going to pull up a document later on in this story talking about how pretty much alluding to your lack of combat experience. So let's go ahead and start talking about some of that combat experience, right? A little thing called the 2003 Iraq invasion, which you were very well a part of in Bravo Company 1st Battalion 4th Marines.
I appreciate you saying I never served in combat and have no valor because we were there for some of it. We were together. I was in the platoon assault section attached to the line platoons. You were a machine gunner getting some, and we had back to back 9-month deployments. We were there for all 5 the phases of OIF. It's documented. Our awards are documented, and it's not like it's difficult to find. I mean, you could call the Marine Corps in 2 seconds, get your awards. I got mine when I needed to. We had a good band of brothers. It was, I was boys made to men real quick.
Where are you in this platoon picture? Help me find you real quick.
I think I'm actually front and center because the boots are always on the first row.
Let's see.
Yeah, I think I'm front and center.
Is that you?
Yeah, like right below the platoon commander and the staff sergeant. I'm in the digis. I'm left of Mad Max in the digis. Front row.
There we go.
Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, look at that ugly mug.
Yeah, child.
I know, right? So freaking right out the gate, man. Joining the Fleet Marine Force, jumping on a boat, going to freaking Kuwait, standing by, waiting to get the word. You get the word, cross LOD, and literally a armored spear right into the heart of Iraq, taking on the Republican Guard, taking on the Iraqi army, which at least at the time during Desert Storm, it was like the 3rd largest army in the world. I don't know what it was, where it ranked when we went into the country, but
I think it was still the 4th. Yeah, I think it was still the 4th largest land army.
Yeah. So, I mean, fucking not exactly an easy day, to say the least. So, not to mention the fact that it was at that time, it wasn't a question of if, but when we were going to get hit with chemical weapons. Therefore, the fact that we were like MOP 3, most of during the push. So, and
that happened.
Every time Saddam launched a Scud, we had to go to MOP 4, batten down the hatches. But I want to get to the point where, specifically in one of our engagements, you as an assaultman, you had the SMAW rocket. Can you just explain what the SMAW is real quick?
Oh, geez, you're going to embarrass me now in front of my old teammates. It's an 83 millimeter, 16.98 pound, anti-armor dual purpose warhead, small holes into tanks, a lot of pink mist coming out. We also did, thermobaric rounds, which novel explosive, which were about a, quarter pound heavier. That, when you successfully put it through a window or a building, it would take a 2-story, brick mortar building and blow it up completely. You might not have known this, but our beloved Sergeant Major Morales, by the end of the war, had accumulated all of the rest of the battalion's SMAW rockets because your boy was shooting so many of them that we shot the rest of like all the other companies. You know, not just me, our section. We were you know, a little quick on the trigger when it came to letting a rocket loose for some of those engagements.
And you know, by the end of that deployment, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going off of my own memory here, you were awarded a Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal with Combat Distinguishing Device.
I think one or two from that deployment. Yeah.
So
by our second Jesus or third Jesus, you know, we have the Jesus actual, then probably Chesty Puller, third being, you know, the Honorable General Mattis signed my award, that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so again, that will come into play later on, and I just wanted to point that out because I even to this day, you know, freaking 20 years later, because we just celebrated the 20-year anniversary of the 2003 Iraq invasion. I still remember you receiving a Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal with Combat Distinguishing Device. So, and that combat distinguishing device is very important to distinguish because that designates that you received it in combat, right? If you're back in the rear, back at, you know, Camp Pendleton, California, and you're a cook in a battalion, and you make 5,000 freaking meals for, you know, supporting a battalion in the field, you know, you could possibly get a Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal back in the rear. But you're not going to have a combat distinguishing device.
Not only that, but think about looking back, how many of our guys were awarded anything?
Oh yeah.
To get even a NAVCOM or an RCOM or anything with a V, just get an award as PFC lunch meat in the Marine Corps was kind of a big deal. I think that, you know, probably 10% of our guys got combat awards. We were all in combat. Where, you know, some of the other units you deployed, you're going to come back with a Bronze Star Slick, maybe with a V. It's to put that in calculus. We did some things.
And I'm not saying this to like disparage the Army or the other services, but like I think the Army severely overdoes its awards, and then I think the Marine Corps severely underdoes its awards because, as you said, like, you know, we had some guys do some incredible things in country during the invasion and in our subsequent second deployment, and just, you know, not very much recognition, or at least for what they got. You know, it should have been higher awards. Vice. I talked to guys that deployed with the Army all the time, and it was like damn near everybody got Army commendation medals. You know, fucking just like here, and oh, you breathed in Iraq. Here's an RCOM. Yeah. So
here's your combat distinguishing device. We don't even give out the cars, the combat action ribbon, unless our threshold for that is very where it should be, I would say.
Yeah. All right, so 2003 Iraq invasion, took part in that, and then security and stability operations following the invasion, came back to the States, and then I think it was like 6 months later, we're redeploying to go right back over there. 2004, Najaf, Iraq, and then more combat kicks off there.
Yeah,
arguably probably more intensive combat, given the conditions in Najaf at that time.
Yeah, I'll never forget the night that one of my best friends was blown up in my arms 2 feet away. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, Soren Parks.
Yeah, it was a terrible thing. I mean, I don't really want to get into the combat stuff tonight. I'm glad we highlighted that. I've been there. I've never really talked about the combat. I told you the one combat story I'd be willing to tell you. But yeah, I don't really need to talk about. That's the thing about being a true quiet professional is, you know, as well as I do, the guys who've done the most talk about it the least. And it was important that, you know, have one of my best friends on here clear my name saying, you were there because I was there and I saw you in the shit. But you know, I don't need to really get into it any further than that, really.
Yeah, and again, I bring this up just because I know this is going to come into play later on, and you know, you are without a doubt a brother of mine, and if I had to pick a handful of guys to go downrange with, not knowing what the freaking odds are, not knowing what we're up against, you are without a doubt one of those guys that would be like, I want fucking Adam Schwarzy with me with a small. I got the 240, but I want him with the small.
Combined arms, man.
All right. So, yeah, in a nutshell, 2 combat deployments to Iraq. And again, I just wanted to say that just to preface that, because that's going to come up later on again. And then from there, we kind of parted ways. I left the Marine Corps, went into the reserves. You stayed in. And can you just kind of summarize what you did in the Marine Corps? Because you ended up staying in the Marine Corps, another 10 years total?
Yeah. Yeah. So we did, our 2 back-to-back extended deployments. We hear the first one's in, the last one's out on both deployments. So we did all 5 phases of the Iraq campaign. And then I actually tried to go to Force Recon, and they didn't let me get orders. So I did the next best thing with this MSG. I'm kidding. I had no idea what MSG was either. For those who don't know what the Marine Corps things are, it's embassy stuff. It's a Marine security guard. And kind of like how I fell into the Marine Corps, which set me up for success my entire life, falling into that embassy duty, which is they call it a B billet in the Marine Corps, but it's just the farthest away thing you can think of from, being a Marine infantry guy. You go hang out with the Department of State. You live on an embassy compound around the world, and being a dumb knuckle dragger going in 18 years old, just, bang, bang, shooty things for my first 4 or 5 years. It was amazing, the opportunity and the experience. I got to go hang out at these embassies. And because I had at least the discipline and a little bit of maturity, I did very well at the embassy thing. I took it serious, and like my whole career up until the 18-year mark, I had a phenomenal team of people around me and some phenomenal leaders. One of them actually was one of the witnesses at the trial that I just got through. But he I've got put up for, so I was already meritorious PFC, Lance Corporal. He got me meritorious selected for staff NCO. One of our other buddies, Sergeant Major Collins, was actually on the staff NCO board that year. So I was the 4th most junior ranked selected staff NCO, so low actually that my below zone promotion superseded my meritorious promotion. But it was a great opportunity. I went and got to represent the U.S. ambassador, charge d'affaires at certain events, and then the shares and my detachment commander got together and wrote me a meritorious commissioning package to the Marine Corps. It was called MESEP, but essentially the U.S. taxpayer said, hey, you're top performer in the Marines. We're going to go pay for you to go back to and get your college degree. So I was going to go to Georgetown, the Walsh School of Foreign Service, but I'm actually adopted as well. I met my biological family after I joined the Marines. So I found out that I had 3 full blood brothers and sisters who are a lot younger than me. At the time, they were really young. I went back home to Minnesota. I got my little undergrad degree right behind me, actually. But it was an opportunity to go be a big brother to my newly discovered family, which was some of the best years of my life. But like a true Marine, I was ready to knock out. I was on the path to do a 4-year career in 2 years, because that's how hungry I was to get back out there and get some. That's what so you're attached to the NROTC at the school. So you're attached to all the little midshipmen. And, usually like the senior Marine is like a sergeant major or first sergeant. He uses these meritorious commissioned Marines, these staff NCOs, to kind of help him guide and mentor the younger ROTC scholarship boys and girls. And I still have some really great friends. I actually had dinner in a week with one of the guys I went through that program with. He was going through the university on his scholarship while I was back as a 6-year-old crusty staff NCO at the time. From there, you do Marine Corps Officer Candidate School your first summer off of college. I met a buddy who was in Force Recon. He said he was trying to do a cross transfer of his commission and go Navy. And I was like very confused. I'm like, you mean to tell me the Marine Corps is going to invest, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and at the 11th hour you're going to be able to ditch? And he's like, it's a difficult process, but I've started it on my end. So I went back. And again, I was so blessed with the people that I've worked for my whole life. I had a captain, she submitted my package, fully recommended. The captain at the Navy, ROTC, he's, signed off on it. But most importantly, you'll think this is cool, the Commandant of the Marine Corps had to approve it. And he wrote me this cheeky letter back like, hey, you've been a great war fighter for the Marine Corps. If you can get picked up for SEALs, good luck. I'll let you go. This was essentially it. It was badass. It's in my official record. But to have the Commandant write, a nobody like me, that letter, and I was the only person of anybody that I talked to who was trying to do that got their package fully approved. But then the onus was on me. I had to get picked up for a spot. There are about 15,000 NROTC scholarship people are competing for like about 15 slots. So, math for poets here, that's like 1 in 1,000 to get picked up for those spots because they're so coveted. I think we have like, 80 to 100 maybe SEAL officers start the pipeline every year. But those are broken up. The Service Academy, the Naval Academy gets half of those right off the bat. Then there's direct commissionees from the enlisted SEAL community. Then there's officer commissioning school, where essentially it'd be cheaper for the military just to like let somebody who's got their college degree go to BUDS. But so there's about 15 slots, I think, that are whittled down to all the people that are under naval scholarships throughout the entire nation for a BUDS contract. And, essentially I was able to get selected for one of those. So in 2012, I went from wearing my awesome Marine Corps sexy, dress blues to, there it is, the milkman uniform there, getting sworn in by my buddy's dad, a Navy commander. So that was kind of, one alpha achieving my childhood dream. Actually, Sergeant Major Morales came in to be my first salute as well. So it was amazing to get to finally achieve that benchmark. Yeah, there's Sergeant Major Morales. And then because I was ready to do a 4-year degree in 2 years. But the funny thing is, after I got selected for SEALs, I had to do naval officer commissioning requirements, which is different, very distinctly than Marine Corps officer commission requirements. Like Calc 1 and 2, Physics 1 and 2, I have had half of an engineering degree. And boy, I'd rather, go to the gates of the JOF than have to take Calc 1 or 2 again. It was worse. I'd rather literally go to, Fallujah with just an MRE spoon than do physics. It's actually funny. So other than after when I was trying to get out of the Navy SEALs, I'd never, I don't wear the sexy gaiters or the G-Shocks or any of that stuff. I've always been a low profile dude. You know me, I never had social media on any of that stuff. The one time I actually played the SEAL card was before I was even a SEAL. I was in my physics for science engineering majors 2 class, and I had a C- going into the final. And if I did not get a C in this class, I wouldn't have successfully achieved the requirements needed to commission as a naval officer. So I had gone to all the after study student TA things. I'd done all the practice things. I was front row in the class 30 minutes prior every day, last to leave. I was putting in the work. I'm just a window licker. But at the end of the day, I'm like, hey, I pulled my professor aside. He's like, hey, Adam, he knew I was a staff NCO in the Marine Corps because you have to wear a uniform every night. I was like, well, I'm going to level with you, sir. This is, my last final. I'm about to graduate. But if I don't get at least a C- in your class, I'm going to lose my commission to be a Navy SEAL officer, which has been my whole life's dream. I don't know what I actually got on the test or not, but I got a C in the class. So I commissioned successfully in 12, went right to BUD. Was very fortunate. I got classed up right away. Also, so other than the combat story that you didn't actually have me tell, which maybe we will some other podcasts, but I went to SEAL training not being able to swim, which is crazy for later on. But most SEALs, they like go there, or prospective SEALs, they go there with all these phenomenal scores. I could not swim. It was so embarrassing, especially showing up as an officer. Usually the officers are expected to like be the pace setters and everything, specifically the runs and the swims, because they're all these, collegiate D1 water polo players and stuff. I couldn't swim. But again, I figured it out. It's a funny vignette, especially because I ended up being an undersea element later on in the teams, but we'll get there.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we can start leading into just your time in the SEALs and then leading into this whole debacle that happened to you.
Yeah, so I graduated at that time. SEALs, after they got their tridents, they were having to go through a language school. I'd already done, 4 years in Iraq and another 3 years of Arabic in college. So I graduated the language program early, which allowed me to check into my team early. So I did, essentially an extra full deployment at SEAL Team 3, which is a pretty storied team. Great dudes. That was the team I wanted to go to. There's a lot of team rivalry and East Coast West Coast rivalry, but I had phenomenal leaders and mentors at Team 3, especially the officer in charge that I worked for who recognized, and the troop commander actually, they both recognized that I had some shortfalls. Frankly, coming in as a staff NCO, I had some cultural things that need to change, some work habit. It was definitely a cultural difference, but I was able to reform, rebrand, assimilate into the SEAL junior officer culture. Did one deployment, and then I went back on a second deployment with Team 3, where my troop commander got fleeted up, who's 04, he got fleeted up to be the acting XO forward. So my troop commander then my platoon commander then got fleeted up to be kind of our pseudo troop commander, which gave me the ability to, because I already had a prior deployment under my belt, be the alert force acting platoon commander for the majority of that deployment, doing things in the Arabian Peninsula. And we did some, it was not nearly as kinetic like our Marine Corps days were, but it was great because we were getting to get involved in things that were bigger than, shooting a dirt farmer in Iraq. We were having more of an operational impact, which was really cool to kind of peel back and get to see things from a higher elevation. It was on that deployment where I was selected for the following year as the sole applicant from the entire pool of junior naval special warfare officers to go to this undersea element. They change the numbers all the time, the task org and everything, but it's essentially just naval special warfare undersea. Very unique capabilities. I don't want to get into them. I don't need to get into them, but it's something that's very unique to the U.S. The U.S. and the British are the only entities that have this sort of undersea warfare capability. Yeah, I see you have pulled up an SDV, sealed delivery vehicle. But yeah, that's the kind of things we would use to get our infiltration to do these missions. And again, just very unique to the United States of America. Very honored to have served in that entity for 6 years in different roles, and again, kind of achieving my childhood dream to go and be a part of that entity. It was an honor, and then just the guys that I got to work with there were top tier.
And they use those in that 80s Navy SEAL movie?
Yeah, and The Rock.
Oh, yeah, they did use it in Iraq, huh?
Yeah.
Forgot about that one.
Yeah, I think they probably also use some other videos. I mean, you can Google a lot of different stuff. I don't need to get into the tactics, techniques, that certainly the missions that I've been a part of, but it was just an honor to be there. I mean, that's kind of been like my experience throughout the entirety of the military. I always worked for good dudes who pushed me to be good. I was able to ride their coattails, and the guys who I worked with were so good that it made me bring my A game every day. That I was meritorious promoted, get combat awards, get assigned to these unique opportunities, and that happened in that instance as well. The mentorship I received at Team 3 set me up for getting selected for the NSW Undersea, and then I had some good leaders at Undersea, which allowed me to get be selected as for these different missions, and for really just to be there, frankly.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, because as we move forward and talking about this debacle that happened to you, U.S. military is filled with just superb warfighters, superb leaders, but in the end, there's still human beings in there, right? You have bad leaders, you have bad leadership at times, so it's not that everybody is just piss poor leadership in the U.S. military, which is sometimes portrayed that way. there's a lot of good leadership, but there's also some bad leadership. And unfortunately, we're going to see some examples of that going forward. So,
Yeah, buddy.
So let's move forward. Now it's 2020, and
Yeah. So
the
2020.
Chi-Coms have unleashed a bioweapon on the world.
Yeah. So 2020 was supposed to be the true, I would say, culmination of my life's work. I had for about 2.5 years been working with the Central Intelligence Agency, and we have a DoD office inside of that. And I was going to spend the last 30 years, working under intelligence authorities while still wearing, the DoD uniform on, but I would have been working under the intelligence authorities. I don't know really any more than that because I never got to go there, but I could have essentially been that guy doing Navy SEAL things with the CIA guys. That was my childhood dream. It's kind of a moot point because I never got to go there. I never got to execute those orders, which was, again, I think there's like 6 billets, so 6 dudes over there, and they're signed off on by the Secretary of Defense. So a lot of, vetting that, it's a 2.5-year process. I hope you have it, the mugshot, because come April 10th, 2020, my life was changed my trajectory of my life was changed. So I was the in-water mission commander for essentially what would have been the Super Bowl for SEAL operation. We've been on the same tether for almost 2 years for this target. And it probably takes a little bit explaining, but we were traveling all over the country and other areas to prepare for this thing that, it kept getting delayed. You can't just sit on the edge of the bench, rigid rate press forever. So we were taking trips to first off, we were taking trips to further our capabilities all the time. But on top of that, our boss, my acting troop commander or task force commander at the time, was giving me and everybody the ability to take vacation days when able. And when I say when able, it wasn't often because we were diving over 180 days out of the year. That year leading up to April, we dove on, for instance, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. We just didn't take dives off because, as a master of our craft, we wanted to have that thing perfect if it were to go off. But come April 10th, it was a holiday. I lived on base at a boat in the military boat harbor. It was a 4-day weekend, and the power went out to the boat harbor. So there I was for 4 days without power. And as a Marine who's done deployments off boats, you know how hot ships get when there's no power or AC. So I had no power. So it was getting to 100+ degrees in my house. And meanwhile, this is only 4 days I'm going to have had off in probably at least 4 months at the time. So I called my boss. I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to the next door island. I was working out of Hawaii at the time, same state. I'm Department of Defense. I'm excluded from all weird things that are happening. And frankly, I didn't even know it was happening because all day, every day, all we were doing is diving. He's like, hey, roger that. No problem. I got you. Normally we'd fill out a paper, what's called a special request chit. Also not uncommon to not fill them out though. I'd gone on other trips, other guys in our platoon had gone on other trips without filling them out. It wasn't a big deal. Going from Oahu, Hawaii to Kauai, same state, different island, different world. We get off the airplane, we're harassed, we're stripped, not physically stripped. They're going through our stuff. They're because it's just a cultural thing. My partner and I, my girlfriend, we looked like wealthy white people. At that time in Hawaii, they were trying to keep tourists out of Hawaii because they were scared of COVID. Hawaii had the most draconian COVID restrictions ever. I mean, history is going to laugh at the shit they did. You couldn't go hiking on trails. You couldn't go to the beach. You couldn't go up in the mountains. They locked down the tennis courts where, if you know the game of tennis, you're 30 feet away hitting a ball back and forth. but you could they never closed down like TJ Maxx. Go to the beach, so they'd all go in these long lines at TJ Maxx. Anyways, it feels like I'm taking crazy pills now, still today talking about it. But we went to Kauai and they said, hey, you can't go to your hotel. I'm like, hey man, I half my Marine Corps buddies are police officers, respect police. We just need to get groceries. They're like, you cannot go get groceries. You need to have them delivered. Use Uber Eats or something. So my girlfriend and I, again, we're not going to argue with the police officer. We go to our hotel, and the whole way it's on the other end of the aisle, and we're like, Uber Eats not working because of COVID. There's no delivery at groceries. Again, it's COVID. So what do? We have no option. We're there for 4 days. Are we not supposed to eat? There's no restaurants. Sorry, there was restaurants. We weren't going to go to a restaurant. We literally I just wanted to do nothing. I dove for 4 months straight. I just wanted to bed and literally just do things for 4 days and get groceries and cook. So we did like the best option, which was go to a grocery store literally right across the street from where we were staying. And again, context is crazy here. I've spent my whole life being a quiet professional, never posted anything. I've been a law-abiding citizen, dedicated my whole life to service to our country. We came out of the Foodland grocery store, Brent. I shit you not, they took me down like I was Al Capone. They had sent 5 squad cars in. They had like, the inner and outer cordon. There it is. There it is. Violating the Kauai COVID, quarantine as a U.S. service member going to get groceries. And that picture right there that you're seeing now, it was before George Floyd. So that was on the front page in the Hawaii papers. We were on the Hawaii news. It was front page in the UK. It was front page in Australia. It was front page in New Zealand. That picture there went all over the web. So I went from having no online signature to being like public enemy number 1 and framed as this like white howly tourist guy who just gives his thumb up to, civil laws and, other people's safety, which is just crazy. But that was the narrative.
If I could just throw this in there, Adam. So if you guys Google Adam's name, Adam Schwarze, the news report is uploaded to YouTube, and you can go there and watch it. And they show him like he's a freaking terrorist, right? And look at the comments from like 2 years ago, because YouTube timestamps the comments, and you'll see all these like residents there that are posting. And you just tell they're the type of people that wear COVID masks in their car by themselves. They're like, thank God they're arresting these people, these violators, for going to a grocery store. Get out of here.
Yeah. Well, some of that's context because everybody's laughing now. If you aren't laughing now, you just haven't been paying attention. But that was the very beginning of COVID, so people were concerned, and I get that. I am not. I'm empathetic to that. I was empathetic to that even back then. I didn't know what was going on, but it just didn't make sense that an American citizen could not go and get groceries in the country that he fought for and was doing nothing wrong. I was exempt. I was in the military anyways. And then I wasn't given a chance. And so that sucked. I was burned. I lost my orders. But really the worst part about that was the knife in the back that I received from my Commodore, because it became this investigation immediately. Well, first off, I was fired before anything happened civilly. I was, for anything like outside of the military, I was fired. I was removed from my mission. My mission unit was all stood down. And then there was an investigation. Now, meanwhile, I was then put on quarantine once I got back to my home base, which was Oahu. And that same boss who's like, hey, I give you permission. He's like, hey, bro, I forgot to let anybody else know that I gave you permission. So it was like, hey, man, no worries. I'll take the heat for this. I was the number 1 dude for the past 6 years at my command. So like fitness reports for officers are kind of similar to Marine staff NCOs and NCOs. You have like your soft breakouts and your hard breakouts. My soft breakouts were like, baddest dude ever, John Rambo. But even my like the numbers part, the part that matters, I was, jumping dudes who were there in seniority longer than me, which is very unique. It doesn't happen often. Again, I would never tell anybody this, except for it's kind of germane to the situation. I was doing very well. So it comes out that, my boss says, hey, I didn't give Schwarzy permission. He just, went rogue. That was like the narrative back to command. And I, being a good dude, I went with it. I was like, hey, I went there. I just didn't realize, COVID was a thing. I didn't have power. I needed to eat when I went there. I was respectful. You can check that there's, nobody says anything other than me being respectful to the police officers. I need to get groceries. What are we talking about here? But no, they were going to take me to what's called mask or non-judicial punishment for going there because I did not get permission, allegedly. So again, I was just going to eat that pill and ride or die until my lawyer called. So at the last moment I lawyered up, I had been there, not operating with a lawyer, just me talking to people, writing statements along with this thing. I think, the military is going to take care of me. I've been a good dude. I've lived my life with honor. I find out, you're going to go to mass on Friday. I go to get a lawyer. The first thing my lawyer does is talks to me. Here's my story. And then he calls over to the Commodore's lawyer. He's like, hey, you idiots, you're about to, take this guy to mass. And he was given approval from his boss. So I didn't tell anybody that. And me being a good dude, again, my lawyer calls me back, he's like, hey, just, I called the Commodore's lawyer. I told him that you were given permission. I'm like, well, I was going to take the bullet on this. So I do the most buddy, honorable thing ever. I call my boss. I'm like, hey, dude, just so you know, this thing has been outed. My lawyer talked to the Commodore's lawyer. It's known now that you gave me permission. So what does he do? He doesn't go own it that he gave me permission. He goes and talks to our commanding officer. He's like, stuff's weird with Adam. I can't work with him anymore. So I get completely removed out of the command. So I'm like, but for me, I'm like, hey, that sucks. But at least it's out there now, and I can hold my head high knowing I'm not a snitch. Like, I did write an official statement saying that I went there, just going rogue. But the truth came out. They redid the entire investigation, and it's so stupid. It's small but funny. During like the build up to the initial investigation, the DCO, who's the deputy staff officer, this number 2 guy for like the Commodore, he's like, how could you not know what's going on with COVID? I'm like, because we were diving every day. We don't live in your ivory tower, pushing papers, submarine guy, sir. But what if I had gotten permission? He's like, absolutely no way. 0 way you were given permission. If you just rewrite your statement, though, saying that you knew about COVID, we'll re-examine this thing. But if you say you didn't know that COVID was going to be a big thing, I'm going to have to recommend you. They wanted me to change the narrative because it would make then my Commodore look like he had passed the word, because there was a general order on travel restriction that never made it to any of us. Which is funny because I will never forget this from my days. Like, if you rewrite your statements, saying this, we'll let you go. I'm like, no, I'm a man of honor. I'm not going to rewrite my statement. But I was saying that I didn't get approval when I did. So when they found out that I did get approval, they redid the entire investigation. Spoiler alert, they found out from like phone records that I had with my boss, timestamps. My girlfriend was right next to me. She heard him say like, yeah, I got you. The investigating officer, the second time, was like, yeah, there's no way his boss didn't know that he was either going or he explicitly gave him approval. They still fucked me over anyways. They still took me to mass. But what they charged me with at mass was the first statement I said where I did not get approval. So I got, essentially my career ended for trying to cover for my boss. And the worst part about that whole thing is nobody in the entire SEAL community knows about that till this moment. Is I didn't tell anybody. I just took it and I got isolated, ostracized. The majority of my guys just thought it was weird. They didn't. Nobody knew what had happened. They just thought that some stuff happened, and then Adam snitched on the boss, and that's why the thing got blown up. They didn't realize that there was this attempt to have a cover up by the Commodore, where essentially, I'm sure my commanding officer got some kind of paperwork. They fired my boss anyways because it came out that he gave me approval, but then I was still, career ended because I said I went rogue when I didn't.
So my question is, obviously the cover up is always worse than the lie. why didn't this Commodore just come out from the get go and say, yeah, that was my guy, my bad. I gave him permission that he's out there freaking slaying bodies, training day in day out. I mean, why was there this big like let you burn for essentially his jack up?
Yeah, because he's a '06 and he got selected for '07. So, and it's weird because as a Marine, I think the majority of my my professional military education was about like, code of conduct, moral ethics, doing the right thing. We learned so many times about, the difference between moral courage and physical courage. I mean, I remember, going for my boards and had to explain what that meant to me personally. SEAL officers don't get that. And the SEALs right now within their officer corps, they have no iota of moral courage. I'm not talking about their physical courage. The majority of them done a lot of great things, but we just have a serious moral courage issue within the SEAL community officer corps right now. They're and it's partially because there's so few of them compared to Marines and Army. They're under the microscope. SEALs are under the microscope, but they, doing the right thing. That was obviously not his motive. His motive was to put on a star, which he was selected for. And I appreciate you asking that question actually, because it would have been the right thing to do at the time. They're like, hey, no, they were diving. They didn't get this. And it came out in the investigation. Like, we didn't get that little order, failure to, pass the call to the post more distance than my own, Article Order number 4. Yeah, no, he failed. But instead of owning that or providing any sort of top cover, he just screwed the 3 echelons below him. I mean, the good news is at the end of the day is my boss, when everything went sideways and there was the second investigation, my boss was like, hey, you better not go after Adam. He knows where the bodies are buried. He's been here 6 years. He knows all the things that are really messed up. And then, it was an investigating officer was like, well, what sort of things does he know are messed up? And then my boss was like, well, he knows about all these explosives that are getting stolen. He knows that this boat was, flipped over and nobody was held accountable. It's like a $500,000 dive boat, some near drownings. We were this is the other crazy part. We were having to share our draggers, which is our breathing apparatus. It'd be like sharing a ventilator. Well, guys were coming down with COVID, and then we were so short on gear because we were traveling all over the place. We were sharing ventilators, these draggers, these breathing apparatuses with dudes that had COVID because they couldn't get us more of them because but you're going to fry me because of COVID restrictions, but not provide me gear and then pretend like, anyways, all of that stuff was documented in the second command investigation. And now that Commodore, that guy who was selected for '07, like a year and a half ago, he's under investigation now because all of that stuff has come up now, like spoiler alert, and I didn't even have to say anything again. It's like all my boss, hey, he was going to narc on explosives. I didn't say anything. It's awesome. It's all documented. It was all my boss saying stuff. But now the Navy has to go back and be like, well, what explosives were stolen? Why didn't you investigate these, Captain, Admiral Select Bennett? Why was this boat, $500,000 boat sunk and nobody was ever held accountable? And I mean, he's a turd, but he'll go away eventually. It's not what I'm here to talk about, but it is funny. It is funny you bring up why did he just do the right thing? Yeah.
What goes around comes around. It always does.
Yeah. I mean, that's funny that we say. I forget the mantra of the Marine Corps, but in the SEALs, the Bud's gods. They're always looking the Bud's gods came and got him.
All right, well let's move on because this is kind of the beginning, at least my understanding. This is the beginning of this whole snowball of shit that just keeps building up and building up.
Yeah, so that was April of 2020, and then that essentially ended my career. So I was removed from the operating, task units. I still held a spot at, Naval Special Warfare Undersea, but I ceased to operate from then forward. And, I essentially, I was done. I wanted to I actually tried to resign my commission after that at 18 plus years. I wanted to pick up my ball and go home. My commanding officer, it's like, yo, you're an idiot. You deployed a million times. You have nothing medical record. Just stay low, take care of you. We'll work together. We'll find out an exfil plan for your career. You can stick until 20. So I said, okay, roger that. I'm still going to make one more pitch. So I went, and fell on my sword, in front of a new Commodore now, a different guy. The turd is left. There's a new guy. He has a phenomenal rep. And to this day, I still think like this guy has a badass reputation in the community. He's like everybody, enlisted officer. He's like just a good rep in the community. I'm like, hey, sir, can I get my orders back? And he's like, hey, first off, I don't know you. Second off, those orders are gone, man. Like you're burned. Like those are, held at the SecDef. We can't let you go. There's nothing I can do for you. So roger that, sir. I appreciate you just telling me to my face. He did tell me to my face. He allowed me to go have an office call with him, which is kind of a big deal to go have an office call with the Commodore. And then I was going to go and prepare. I was thought like, hey, this guy with the greatest rep, he was a prior detailer in the community. He can get my orders back. He told me no. I canceled my leave that was scheduled to go get my orders back, and went straight to Walter Reed to try to get, some TBI stuff. I documented like thousands of concussions, all the breaching, all those rockets, all the combat, the jumps, the falls. I don't have anything. I didn't at that time have anything documented. And I was trying to get into the TBI center at Walter Reed. And again, this was understood by everybody. It's going to come up later, so it's important to note. I never, filed for to take leave to go on my pre-PCS orders to the CIA that was cut. I never filed for that leave, and I never canceled that leave. I called to have admin put it in for me, and I called to have admin take it away for me. And it's going to be really important later on that I never went on leave. I went right to Walter Reed, and there wasn't a really good coordination between the Hawaii Care Coalition and the East Coast Navy SEAL SOCOM Care Coalition. So I kind of sat on my hands for about 4 or 5 weeks trying to figure out what I should do. But again, it's documented all day that I'm calling people. I'm actually going to Walter Reed, just like looking around, trying to figure out who I should be checking into. Finally, I bump into this lieutenant colonel. He actually is in charge of the SOCOM care unit at Walter Reed. It was like badass. He gets me squared away, but I start rocking and rolling. And so eventually I don't get to do like the TBI stuff. Like that's like the world renowned TBI stuff. I just start doing all like my orthopedic brain, everything neck down really starts getting documented. At that time, on my way out, if you have the document, we can start going through the document orders. But on my way out, I had an out call with my executive officer. And I said, hey, I am going to get out of the military. This is now after George Floyd had happened. This is after, I'm from Minnesota. So my life was impacted by poor leadership and governance. And then immediately following that, we had, and I'll say his name, George Floyd. That was a terrible, tragic murder. The officer was convicted of murder. We need police reform, but there was no leadership at any level of government, from my local government all the way through the White House. And that everybody was just silent. They allowed it to happen. They allowed, cops to get shot at. They allowed cops to get rocks thrown at them. They let a police precinct, it blows my mind, burn to the ground in Minnesota. None of the local leaders did anything. The governor's actually, to this day, he's a reservist, I think he might be a Navy Master Chief or an Army Sergeant reservist, but like made no call. Just like your cities are burning, no call made, no tactical call, no operational call. Didn't call on the National Guard for 4 days. And then, my congressperson at home immediately tried to repeal qualified immunity for police officers. And that was near and dear to my heart, because as a former Marine Corps infantry guy, like probably, I think sadly about 20% of the people we served with has committed suicide or were killed. But I think another probably quarter of those people who are still alive on the planet are serving in law enforcement. So I was going to try to go home and just be the same dude I was when I was in the military, just a pragmatic person. Hey, we can have police reform, but not throw out the baby with the bathwater and try to repeal police officers in the city of Minneapolis. They literally voted on that, Brent, to disband police in the city of Minneapolis, which is now turned into Murderapolis. So I've had this conversation with my executive officer. he made some big jokes because we already have a former congressman in, in the great state of Texas, God's country. In your state, there's a former SEAL congressman. I was going to go try to, walk down those. So I submitted this document on 28 July 2021, and it is a request for permission to qualify as a candidate for the civil office of one of Minnesota's congressional seats. And I don't know if you have the thing, you can throw it up, but it is important because it's a request to the Service Secretary of the Navy. There's about a 4-page document of directives on what you can and cannot do while you're in the military. Yep, that's it, brother. Yep. So I sent that to the Secretary of the Navy, understanding that there was 0% chance that he was going to authorize my candidacy. I sent it up knowing that he wouldn't, but at least I did the right thing. And at that point, I was just getting my medical stuff done. And I was planning to run once I retired, but it was just, planning for after I retired. A couple of months later, I'm in DC getting all my medical stuff done. I'm prepping, again, when I say prepping, I'm making connections for the run that I'm going to do after I retire. I started talking to White House ethics lawyers who worked under the former president, and we started figuring out, how can we, pull the slack out of this trigger a little bit. So if you go to the second document, enclosure 2, there is a different, it's service limitations memo B. And why this is critically important, because on that same 4 pages of what you can and can't do for political things, it talks about if you're under less than 270 days. And these White House ethics lawyers, I'm talking to flag officers in the military who don't want to, think about it from their perspective. They know this dude's going to run as a Republican. It's a Democrat cabinet, overseeing the Secretary of the Navy, and they are under White House, under, now a Democrat in the White House. They don't want to say, hey, I'm, legal schmuckatelli Admiral so-and-so, this is good to go. But they said, hey, no matter what, we see it this way, the military might stuff you on it, but what they can't do is stop you from sending it up. So every single lawyer, I had talked to 5 of them. They're like, hey, go ahead and send it up. See if there's any pushback. It's a great way to test the water and if this is going to work. And why that's important is because it would allow me to file and be a candidate early. So under 270 days of service. And that for me would have been October 1. So as you can see, I sent up that notification 25 September. Sent it in, called it into my chain of command received it. No pushback. They said it was routed. And that's important also because that is a notification. It's not a request. And it goes to my first flag officer, who was the commander of naval special warfare. So from September on, I think that, hey, my thing has been routed, good to go. I've got confirmation. I've checked in. Actually, despite all the phone calls, I've 13 times in emails where I checked in saying, hey, is this good to go? Yes, you're good to go. Fast forward to, and concurrently, I found out that there's this thing called Temporary Early Retirement Authority. It's TERA for short. On 1 November, I sent my TERA request in, and that is, I actually want to read that because, again, it's really important for just this whole narrative. I sent that in 1 November, and what TERA is, it is something that's congressionally mandated that the Department of Defense have on standby, funded through 2025. It started, I think, in 1993. 2017 got reapproved, and then pre-approved in 2022, funded through 25. Oh, yeah, you have it pulled up. I'm going to read it. I'm respectfully requesting for permission to retire under the Temporary Early Retirement Authority effective 1 January. On 1 January, I will have been on active duty for 19 years and 190 days. I'm currently set to retire from active duty on 24 June 2022. I do not have any outstanding obligated service for training or education. I'm currently on the DoD Skill Bridge program, which really meant that I was doing nothing. I was on my own time getting my medical stuff. I served no capacity. I have completed turnover of my duties and responsibilities within the Navy, and I have completed the retirement process. This request will immediately save the American taxpayers approximately $80,000 in 6 months of my pay being forfeited, as well as hundreds of thousands of dollars and my lesser retirement percentage over the course of my life. More importantly, though, brother, I was one of 8 dudes on that mission element that does naval special warfare undersea things. So I was still this entire time taking a spot on the bench for one of those 8 dudes. They didn't get another dude until I got off the bench. Meanwhile, again, since April 2020, I have not done anything operationally. So point number 6, this will free a spot for naval special warfare to backfill a skilled SEAL officer at my command, which I'm holding even while taking part. So this was the first opportunity for the Navy to have an off-ramp saying, hey, if this guy's going to run for office, let's just get him out. I mean, everybody wins. All stakeholders win. The taxpayer wins. The Navy wins. The American taxpayer wins. I win this as the service member. And I'm the least important on that bench. I would say it's, me, the least important on that totem pole, the Navy before that, and then the taxpayer. But all stakeholders would have won. Got no answer on that or the request and the notification, just comms black. So it wasn't until that December where I saw all of a sudden I get a call from my Commodore, which is very weird. You do not get a call from your Commodore, especially when you're off the grid, essentially about to retire. I got an email from his lawyer at the time. He's like, hey, stand by for a call from the Commodore in like 1 hour. I'm like, very weird. He calls me. He's like, hey, Adam, he said, you did not get approval to run as a candidate. There's really no way around this. It's pretty cut and dry. What the F, sort of. And I was like, what are you talking about? You're right. Like, I got no approval for that request, which we didn't expect to get. But I filed this notification months ago and was told that I was routed up to the SEAL commander, no problem. And he's like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, since he hung up the phone, really embarrassed. I'm sure his whole staff got an ass chewing after that. Like, what the F? But that set off this, not a cat and mouse game because it's really cat and American flag. I was doing the right things, but in the background, it's also important to know that around this time, I had also requested to retire. Normally, I requested to just resign. They said no. I requested to get my early retirement, which would have been a great off ramp for everybody. They didn't action it. They didn't action it, and that's when I went to a phenomenal American hero called the fine Senator Kramer from the state of North Dakota, who chairs the Undersea Committee, the subcommittee on Naval Special Forces and Sea Power. So like his 9 to 5 in the U.S. Senate is like what I was doing, spun up on all of our missions, everything Navy SEAL. Like, this is the dude. I'm like, hey, sir, I'm trying to retire and the Navy's getting weird. It wasn't even about a politics thing at first. He was just trying to do constituency service. I'm not in his part of his constituents in the neighboring state of Minnesota, but it made sense as he's like in charge of the responsibility of naval special warfare, naval sea power, right? So this guy then goes to Navy like, hey, why won't you let this guy out? And then everybody finds out allegedly at that time that, hey, he's trying to run for office. We can't let him out. We're not going to approve his tariff. We won't even action his request for early retirement. We still didn't action his request to run as an office. And now we're going to deny the notification that he sent up 2 months ago. So it's crazy. So that happened in December. But the problem was earlier in December, again, I filed the notification 25 September on I think 10 December. So like two plus months later, my partner filed with the FEC. So at that point, the train had left the station. I was at that point a declared candidate through the FEC, but very important to note, never in the state of Minnesota. So what that means is there was a committee stood up that my partner was in charge of. My partner ran, and if you could do me right now, brother, if you could Google can active duty people run for office, it'll give you an article on political roll call, but it'll give you, this is not I forget what the lawyers called it, but the first time this has ever happened. During the President Trump's administration, an Army SF guy went and ran for Congress as a Democrat. The only difference was, President Trump and his team never stymied this candidacy. He was under 270 days, just like I was at the time, and he was running a congressional campaign. If you could put that link up, that would be really great for everybody who's just casually interested in this whole thing, because that is kind of how I put together my whole team. It's essentially using SF guy running. That's the directive. Just put Ken active duty military run for. There you go.
This one?
There it is. That is. You found it. That was literally what I found when I was in DC getting my medical treatment done. That we went and got all the lawyers together and like, hey, I'm a special ops guy. This guy's a special ops guy. I have less than 270 days. This guy has less than 270 days. How did that happen? Well, he did the same process that I did, except that he didn't get his life ruined by the military, essentially. So he ran a campaign, unsuccessfully, but it was during the previous administration, during the prior administration for the Democrats, but not messed with. So anyways, what's up, buddy?
I said shocking.
Yeah, shocking, right? It's just great. This whole story is crazy. But that was really how we did it. So my girlfriend had, filed with the FEC. There's one contract between her, not me, and this general consultant. And then there was like an umbrella corporation of shit that was happening. Again, not with me. I did not have anybody working for me. I didn't have like anything going on. What I was doing back in Minnesota is, hey, as soon as I get out of the military, I am going to run for Congress. I'm going to, this is the problems I kind of already talked with you tonight about. Like I was telling that to everybody, and spoiler alert, when you have a dude who's dedicated his whole life to service and he's talking about these things in an impassioned way, it was resonating with people. So much so, in fact, and this is the kind of the sad part, is the guy who had declared, he was, undeclared in the state of Minnesota. Just like everybody's like, hey, when are you going to declare? When do you declare? We'll have to retire first. So everybody knew this, like all the 250 delegates in the city knew this. People around the state were like getting wind of like, hey, this Navy SEAL, the congressman in Texas, who's the former Navy SEAL, called me. He's like, hey, I heard you're getting ready to run. Yep, just need to get this retirement squared away before I can declare. It was a very known thing that I was waiting till I retired until I declared. And we'll get into that further, but the problem was there was already two dudes who declared. One of them wasn't doing so hot. The other guy was a prior Navy submarine officer. And this guy did not like that. He would go to some place to talk as a declared candidate, and they would be like, yeah, beat it, nerd. We want to hear the Navy SEAL talk. So he started filing complaints with the FEC, with the military. So essentially I got contacted because there was complaints being filed by his family's all prior military lawyers, or military officers, but they were so butthurt that like just nobody cared about this guy. And really, it was the funny part looking back is I was like, oh crap, this guy's a submarine captain. You're like, this guy's going to be badass, and he's going to work so hard because those submarine officers, they work probably longer hours than we do. They do different things. I'm like, this guy is going to work so hard, but he was lazy. He actually wasn't doing anything. So I was doubling down my efforts to like go and meet people and call people, but he just wasn't doing anything. But then when, all the delegates were already like racked and stacked and ready to go, he was just desperate, essentially. So he filed a couple of complaints, and that right there is sadly, that was the ammunition that the Secretary of the Navy, the Chief of Naval Operations, and the Navy had to recall me, was the ammo that the candidate gave them, because they didn't have anything on me. I had a whole team of lawyers on the ground, and even like, Jones Day lawyers, like making sure everything I was doing was on the right side of the black and white. I was certainly running up to the line, certainly, but everything I was on the right side of. But that gave them the ammunition to have, investigations and then recall me. So you could say,
if I can just interject real quick, because in case like somebody joined us late or skipped ahead or something, it's like, you got to put this in perspective. Like here you are, like literally months away from retiring after 20 years of faithful service in both the United States Marine Corps and as a Navy SEAL in the United States Navy. And, you're going to retire after 20 years of faithful service and do this political, race. And now it's like, now they're like, no, stop. What are you doing? I mean, it's ludicrous. So,
it gets way better, brother. It gets way better. So again, I'm supposed to go on terminal leave 1 April, and I had a retirement party on 8 April, which was going to be my announcement, right? So you get your duty 214. You're checked out of the military when you leave. On 3 March, I got an email saying you will be recalled. So on 28 March, I was recalled back to Hawaii 6 days before I was supposed to go on terminal leave. And this is why you could say it was the candidate who submitted the fake, the false complaints, or you could say it was the crappy investigating officer, which we'll get into later on, or the lawyers at the local command who screwed this up, why all this happened. The reason that we know this was cabinet level election meddling is because before I went back to Hawaii, Senator Kramer's office, I touched base with them again, and I talked to the military liaison. He's an Air Force retired colonel, salt of the earth, like really kept me from committing suicide later on. But I'm like, hey, if the military thinks that this is me trying to like skirt things or, subterfuge, good order and discipline, I'll resign my commission right now. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'll resign. And then we don't have anything to worry about. He's like, bro, you are 1 week away from having a 20-year pension. Like, what the F are you saying? I'm like, I just want to prove a point that we all know what's going on here, that this is election meddling. But let's call their bluff. He's like, all right, man, but I just want to confirm, because once I talk to the boss, he's going to demand to have a call with the chief of naval operations. And it's happened. And I'm like, all right, cool. So that happened. The secretary of the Navy and the chief of naval operations got a call from the undersea subcommittee ranking member on sea power. He's like, all right, if this is such a big deal, let the guy go. Then, the taxpayers save millions. I gave away my whole fucking pension, my whole life's work. Yeah, no, we're still going to recall him. So that's where we knew that it was just, this whole thing was just, bullshit. But again, because you're just hearing about this now, I didn't tell anybody. I kept my honor throughout all of this. I never told anybody this story. I just, essentially 2 weeks or 3 weeks before there was the endorsing convention in Minnesota, I all of a sudden just ghosted everybody. Some people, what's kind of cool is some people thought I was going to fight in Ukraine. Some people thought I got called up for a secret mission. They thought Jack Bauer was going down. No, man, I was just getting pulled back.
That's exactly what I thought, because I had a plane ticket to come up there to see you for first time in freaking 20 years.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden it's like, man, I'm getting
First off, I actually wasn't 100% certain why, when they're it was blanket, you're getting recalled. And then it was, you're going to check in this day. This is all. I'm like, oh, this is the meddling. I'm getting recalled because of this thing. But I didn't know how to tell people, how do I say and I'm still an active duty Navy in the military. I can't say, hey, the Secretary of the Navy is, I'm being a turd. I can't say those things. I just completely above the fray, just took it. And this is so I went there, found out immediately when I touched down, hey, you're getting taken to non-judicial punishment. I'm like, hey, at this point, I don't care. I still had retirement orders. Oh, it is kind of important to note. So I was supposed to go on terminal leave 1 April. They just stole my leave for that block. That's illegal. You can't, that's not even a punishment you can give under court martial or non-judicial punishment. They just took it. They said later on that there was an administrative error, but in their own investigation report, which I'm sure is going to probably come up in a trial here, or surely a Freedom of Information Act, my care coalition person in Hawaii is yes, this is the plan. He's going to the East Coast. The dude who was supposed to receive me in the East Coast is yes, he came here. I saw him. He was getting treatments done. the dude who I worked for that skill bridge program, he's like, yeah, I know he was in DC because we were working on things in DC. But most importantly, my own chain of command, my executive officer's like, yeah, we need to get this leave thing squared away because, we told you to go there and do this. So it's like nobody says anything otherwise, but they just stole my leave. It's crazy, but it just shows you how deep like the meddling is on this. Like they broke laws as far as like stealing my leave, my vacation. But again, I didn't care at that point. I just wanted to retire so I could go for it. I knew that it was all bullshit. I just wanted to retire, still have my orders. So I go before the, what's called non-judicial punishment. It was a kangaroo court. Yeah, you pulled it up. Great. This is actually, this is great. So this is a falsified document following that non-judicial punishment, which it's crazy because every line in this is a false official statement, which was also ironic because that's what they said I did, right? They said I made false official statements in 2020. And they said I made false official statements which is why their basis of recalling me when they said I was running like an active campaign when I wasn't. But I would like if we could read through some of these together. They're kind of fun, actually. Lieutenant SCHWARZE'S states that while enlisted, he was meritoriously promoted 4 times, including 2 combat promotions, and received 3 awards of valor. This is not reflected in his military officer personnel file. And while enlisted Marine Corps DD 214 does show awards, none were V for valor.
So there, Adam, there we go. Bringing back up Iraq, right? What we talked about early on in this.
Yeah, can we go to enclosure 5 on this?
All right, go for it.
All right, so I see you have my second report of NJP pulled up. This is like the written summary of what happened after that kangaroo court when I went back to Hawaii, and I get all these. You can imagine if you have the picture, Brent. It's like it's not a judicial proceeding. It's I think I sent you the picture of Top Gun. It's like when Goose and Maverick are on the ship deck and like the captain is just chewing their butts. That's essentially what it was. There was no discussion. There was no attempt to uncover the truth. It was just getting reamed out for being a terrible SEAL, going against the SEAL ethos, which is not Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's its own thing, and we'll talk about that later. But essentially saying that I'm just a terrible human. I've done all these terrible, egregious crimes against humanity, but it's just one-sided, frankly. Oh yeah, you found the picture. Yeah, that's what I went through. But it was like 3 hours of that, just standing at the position of attention. At one point, the guy's like, hey, I want you to go over there to this sign and read the SEAL ethos. This is could be a little bit Debbie Downer, but I couldn't read the thing because I'm kind of going blind now. During that Super Bowl mission that I've been training for 2 years straight, we were out over diving our rigs. Like you're supposed to have, I think, 8 hours of oxygen on your eyes per week. Well, we were diving, 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. And we were doing extended dives longer than those rigs had ever been dove before, ever. So all the oxygen that was built up over my eyes is killing my retina. So like I can't even keep up with my prescriptions. I went from 25 and 20/10 vision in one of my eyes to having readers, and now I'm like getting these Coke bottles. So it really stings when you look at the context of what I just told you, how I kind of like going blind for my country as I read some of these false official statements said about my time in the military. And this is where that 06 in Senator Kramer's office kept me from killing myself because, being a person of honor, I never thought in a million years that my brothers, alleged brothers, somebody who also wore the trident could say these things. And to be honest, it's not written by that guy. This is the same guy, by the way, that has a phenomenal reputation in the community. This was written by his lawyers and another, incompetent staff people, but he still signed it. And it means he stands by this. And it's crazy that, I've sent this exact document up like 6 different times. Like, hey, can you correct this record? This is really just a terrible thing to do and say. Like, no basis or improper way to file, or just being, back to that, my original statement, the military, especially Navy SEAL officer corps right now, are all moral cowards. Just all of them. So many times I would talk to senior SEALs who I'd worked with and like had good rapport with, like, hey man, you want to like step in here or say anything about like their response? Ironically, every single one of them, like 3 different people, hey, you just need to get out, man. Just get out. Like, no, fuck you. I was trying to get out. I was trying to do the right thing. I tried to take off ramps. The Secretary of the Navy and the Chief of Naval Operations kept me in illegally, and now the SEALs are stabbing me in the back mercilessly, and all I want is the truth out. And then I want the truth, and you say, just get out, man. Like, that is so sinister. But let's go through some of these, because they're for you who I've actually spilled blood with. These are actually going to be kind of funny. So essentially, after that non-judicial punishment, I didn't put it in here, but I wrote like a letter saying, hey, I'm not at fault. I'm not perfect. I have failings, but the military has more, onus to bear than me on this. And I said, oh, and by the way, can we look at, the first 18 years and 18 and a half years of my career where, I did X, Y, and Z and all these good things and, in defense of our nation. And this is what they came back with after I said, hey, I'm without fault, or I have fault. Lieutenant Schwarzy summarizes his military career. Many of his claims about his contributions are unsupported by the record, and in some instances are exaggerated or manufactured. That's a false official statement. Everything that I said in my statement was supported by the record, which is actually part of this document. So when you put this link out, people can go see this document linked, and everything that is in this document, I have primary sources to anything that I've ever written. Very methodically primary sourced, like all my awards that I have. I'm missing some awards, but all my awards that I have, the missions, the letter of recommendations, my fitness reports. I'm for team transparency on this. Let's put it all on the table, because spoiler alert, I've been true to my word. My honor's intact throughout this. So let's get it underway. I apologize for the buildup. Lieutenant Schwarzy states that while enlisted, he was meritoriously promoted 4 times, including 2 combat promotions, and received 3 awards with valor. This is not reflected in his military officer personnel file while in the enlisted Marine Corps. His DDT 14 does show several individual awards, but none denote a V for valor. So you were there for some of them, and we'll go to the actual statements from when I physically, after getting this letter right here, the one that I'm reading off, I called Navy Marine Corps records, and the first dude I got is an email back like, here's all your awards, here's where your promotion dates in the Marine Corps, here are these dates delineate that you were combat meritorious promoted. It's mind-boggling. And by the way, this is an official statement. This went to Navy Personnel Command on the record of these matters. Lieutenant Schwarzy states that his SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1 commanding officer ranked him as the command's top mission commander. This is not supported by his fitness reports or by his former command leadership. But again, in my fitness reports, it all says like chosen for a top tier mission, #1 dude. As like the soft breakouts and the hard breakouts, like, correlated. Lieutenant Schwarzy states that he was the most experienced SDV tech specialist. It meant to suggest that Lieutenant Schwarzy had greater SDV expertise than others with whom he served, including those with multiple tours in SW undersea. The statement is false. Lieutenant Schwarzy also claims he identified a propeller and shaft system that scales in size and whatever. I found some nerd stuff with a guy, submitted a white paper to the chain of command that they allege they don't have. But the best part is, in the rebuttal to this, is I then resent them the white paper and all the text and the specifications for this thing that I found. Again, it's crazy, but it gets better, bro. It gets better. Lieutenant Schwarzy states that I designed the original concept of blueprints for a dry dock shelter. However, he's overstating his importance and operations and SDV recovery predate Lieutenant Schwarzy service by decades. Well, again, this is the lawyers. They're misinterpreting what a dry dock shelter like thing is, which it doesn't even matter. They're just dumb. They like took something I said and they're just trying to be mean, essentially. But again, I was awarded by my previous commanding officer for this initiative. It's in my fitness reports. He even gave me like a stupid command coin. He's like, hey, thank you. This is being utilized in operations because of the efforts you did. It's crazy that they would try to deny it. It gets better. It really gets better the further you go down. Lieutenant Schwarzy states, identified and developed all mission as critical technology. I never said that. That's a lie. I did develop technical equipment for this, Super Bowl mission that never happened. It says identifying and developing technology for NSW undersea operations requires a broad spectrum across command and between echelons. That is 100% false. All these, unique missions we did, all of them, it's not like we pick up our, Army M9 Beretta that was, issued 10 years ago to some private, doing the testing phase. Everything is like completely tailored for these missions and tailored by us, the operators, and it just so happens that my lane as the mission commander is like navigation and comms. We have explosion guys who are doing like all the demo package, and the diver guys who are figuring out the diver shit. And, everybody has their own lanes. That's why it's the teams. Weird. But my lane was, navigation and communications. So I did develop unilaterally myself, these tactics, techniques, and really more importantly, the gear that was later then utilized and brought to naval special warfare holistically. One of these tablets that I spent years in development with, the awesome Canadian company Shark Marine, like I was one of the first dudes who's like, hey, we need to invest. And was I the first dude? No, but I was one of the like original guys who like identified that. And all of the gear on this mission was identified either by me or my team. No outsider echelons of like it's crazy. And again, this is an official document, and every single point of this is false. And I know, people are watching and you're like, yeah, we don't care, we get it. But this was my life for 21 years or for 18 years up to this point. Well, people were going into Christmas, I was diving and like developing this tech. Well, people were going home on Thanksgiving, I was diving and, building a submarine at a fabrication shop. However, following this 2020 misconduct, this project was not seen through. This thing was, trashed, and it's inaccurate to describe his efforts as a creation of a new propelled submersible, or simply it contributes to operations. Well, again, that's a false official statement, because that thing was what helped that nerd captain who screwed us all over put on a star, because he was telling everybody in the world that his team, my team and I, we built this submarine that was off the shelf. That like essentially if this little mini sub floated up in bad guy land, it wouldn't be a US, NSN number. It would have been just a piece of shit that we built in a fabrication garage with a bunch of, wrench heads who love to like build shit. And by the way, it increased the order of any combat swimmer leg by 2.5. I'm not going to say like what it did, but the implications for if we had taken on target was massive. But yeah, you're right. After I was burned for getting groceries, the efforts weren't continued. I would submit that's not my fault, though. It does get better. Lieutenant Schwarzy describes his deployment with SEAL Team 3. Considering his other deployments, I encourage a careful review to determine whether he has depicted his contributions and true nature of his operations he describes, particularly his claim to have performed visit, board, search, and seizure, which is like ship takedowns in denied enemy water spaces in Iraq. I'm going to read that statement out again because you and I have been to Iraq. Particularly his claim to have performed visit, board, search, and seizure BBSS operations in denied water spaces within enemy territory in Iraq. So for those of you who are, never got through 5th grade geography, who may be watching, Iraq's almost entirely landlocked. So I have never stated to have done VBSS. I have done VBSS at Team 3 as a SEAL, and I have been to Iraq as a Marine. I've never conflated those two. That is a false and dumb official statement made. But really, it's crazy because not only did they say I didn't go to Iraq, but there's like you've never supported like these other national mission elements, and I didn't want to talk about this earlier, but so I did my 2 deployments at Team 3, and then checking in to this NSW undersea, I went downrange with them for a mission, and again, taking no post-deployment leave from a combat deployment, I went and did an augment with this undersea. And then, and again, I'm not like saying, woe is me. I loved it. I was a young single dude hungry to get on the gun and just operate, right? So, but I went right from that, supporting NSW undersea, and then augmented a different joint special operations unit in NSW in countries that we weren't even declaring that we had U.S. citizens boots on ground. And was I, doing Jack Bauer stuff? No, I was helping out the guys who were doing that stuff. I'm not going to overinflate my importance to that role, but I was fucking there, and I was just as exposed as everybody else. And then when I came back, the first thing that happened was the guy who's the investigating officer. He's like, you used your personal travel card instead of a government travel card. I'm like, dude, I just got done with 4 back-to-back-to-back deployments. If you tell me about that shit again, I'm going to punch you in the face. That was the guy who turned out being the investigating officer when they said I was running for office. So it's crazy. It's mind-boggling. So after they sent that up, I sent a rebuttal up, which, I've sent up 4 other rebuttals, like, again, citing all of my awards. And if you send that out to people, that thing that you're just, had pulled up on the screen, we can send out that link. It literally has some of my awards in there. It has my fitness reports. It has my rebuttals. But then we'll go to, enclosure 6, which is essentially following that, that kangaroo court. I was notified that they were going to put me on trial for my Trident, and it's called the Trident Review Board. And it's not that uncommon that we actually have those. I should say that they have those in the community. Usually they're for like when enlisted guys do something, we'll do what's called a soft pull on their bird or their naval special warfare insignia. Like, hey, they get a DUI or they do something on deployment that's stupid. We'll soft pull their bird. And then you act really good. Nobody wants to lose their warfare device. They act really good. They get it back. But essentially this enclosure right here saying, hey, we're going to have a board. We want you to prove that you aren't a terrible, SEAL, and that you should deserve to have your Trident taken. So I send a letter immediately back in enclosure 7. And it states, yes, I would love to have a board. I would love to have an actual opportunity to defend myself. So that was on 12 July. On 21 July, if you pull up the next one, Brent, is my letter back to the Commander of Naval Special Warfare. So you're reading the first one that says, you have the first one pulled. Yep, that's mine. Like, hey, I am not without fault. I said that, some of my comments could be over the line, but I was actually found innocent of those. I'm trying to be humble here and saying, hey, I would like for an opportunity to defend my Trident. And again, which is not uncommon. I was really actually looking forward to having hopefully an adult conversation about what had happened. That was not to be. So if you go to enclosure 8, the next one.
Give me a second. I'm just scrolling to this page so somebody can see what's actually on here.
Yeah. Before you go to enclosure 8, if you go to the other picture that I had sent, I think it's either from like Top Gun, they're in their dress whites, or like Crimson Tide, they're in their whites. You throw that picture up. Yes, this is what a Trident Review Board looks like. I think this is from Crimson Tide, but this is like, that's what would actually happen. I would get on my uniform, I'd have my Trident on, and I would go before a panel, like happened at the end of the movie where, they found out that, Denzel was doing everything right. That is what a Trident Review Board is. Important to note, you actually go before the Trident Review Board. They actually have the board. They did not have a board in my case. Unprecedented. First off, it's really rare officers go before Trident Review Board, but it is unprecedented, to the best of my knowledge, in the history of naval special warfare, that they just have the board and the dude that's supposed to be there just isn't there. So They had a board, 3 dudes wrote like, "Hey, this guy sucks," in enclosure 8. The funniest part, well, not the funniest part. I mean, it's more poetic. The first dude who signed this, he was my first commanding officer at SEAL Team 3, and I was ranked number 1 out of the 13 ensigns at his command. So let's pretend for a second that like I actually did. I was actually like just trying to usurp the military chain of command and say "F you" to my SEAL brothers and ruin the Trident and run amok and just rage against the machine. Even if I'd done that, what they're actually saying is I was trying to run for office and make America better. I didn't murder anybody. I didn't commit any capital offenses. I didn't rape anybody. We have dudes in the teams who raped children in Hawaii and went to jail, but they didn't take their Trident. We have dudes sadly, team guys do great shit or not great shit. We have team guys who are like in murder in California, convicted of murder. They didn't pull their Trident. They just put them in prison for murder. Here I am. I've never been convicted of anything. Going back to 2020, that COVID thing, spoiler alert, that was all dismissed on the civilian side. Spoiler alert number 2, we're suing the crap out of the state of Hawaii because they ruined my life because of getting groceries. And now again, I didn't get court-martialed. There was no like time for me to defend myself. There's no place where I got to even say anything. I didn't even go to a Trident review board. But here, the Commander Davids, recommends that my Trident be pulled on the recommendation of the board, but there was no board. A lot of virtue signaling and a lot of lack of moral courage by Naval Special Warfare. So this is article or enclosure 9. Are you still showing 8? Yeah, you're gonna go through 8. Yeah, so that dude on the bottom left, that dude, I went to his nephew's or his cousin's funeral because he died at SEAL Team 3. Great operator, great man. And then he doesn't even allow me to go on a board, just says, "Hey, you don't rate the Trident anymore, guy." It's just, there's no moral courage. It's really what it boils down to. And then, obviously there's the political stuff from the Second Av and the CNO. And to a degree, I get that. Disappointed, but I get that everything's politicized. But I would never expect my brothers to say that my whole career was disavowed and then to, without any sort of due process, pull my Trident. Something that I've deployed for like 6 times in the teams on strategic missions. It's not a lie to say that if some of those missions that I'd helped support, if they'd gone awry, there would have been nuclear holocaust. But you're going to pull my Trident because I wanted to make America better. And do it the right way, by the way, which we'll get to later on, which is really the cherry on top of all of this. So are you on article or enclosure 8? Looks like it. Yep. So I sent a complaint again, like, "Hey, you guys are making all these lies. Will you just at least fix this record? Because you're trying to steal my Trident and you just lied over 60 times now." And then the same, moral courage guy, the commander of Naval Special Warfare, sends this note to the SECNAV saying, "Hey, I've checked all these things out. This guy, there's no merit to him saying he's got awards. He doesn't have combat awards. They're improperly filed when he says that he has good fitness reports, but he really is, a guy who rated, non-judicial punishment, and by the way, we didn't illegally take his leave." It's important because none of even the evidence that the military has on that, it all says that they stole my leave. So either they didn't investigate it or they are, doubling down on their steal. Which again, it's so sad that this is all going to come out at some point, and Naval Special Warfare is going to be really like, I forget the literary term, but it's like the unwitting idiot to the administration right now. I think it was a lot of egos. I don't think that the teams were playing politics. They were just carrying water for the politicians and just a complete lack of moral compass. But that's that enclosure saying, hey, all these guys, attempts to, say that this isn't the way it went down. That's not how it went down. In enclosure 10, it's essentially me just going to the next rung. Again, at this point, we knew this was all political, but I could not go directly to the Secretary of the Navy saying, hey, this is all sideways. You're screwing me over through all these guys. I had to go to the chain of command. So this is just to another request to Navy Personnel Command. So now this is a 3-star, and it's essentially saying the same things that I have already told, Navy Special Warfare. Hey, Naval Special Warfare, they're sending things to the SecNav that aren't true. I'd like for you to look at this before you take my Trident, because Naval Special Warfare could say, hey, we recommend your Trident get taken, but it actually gets taken by Navy Personnel Command. It's a big Navy function, right? The SEAL commander can say, hey, this guy sucks, but actually taking it is an administrative thing that the commander of Navy Personnel Command has to do. So I sent him a request as well. Hey, can you look at these things? And then there was just no action. Actually, there was action. He didn't want to do anything. This is the 3-star now. This would be, I think Admiral, I don't want to say the wrong name, but essentially the 3-star Navy Personnel Command, he didn't want to do anything, so he forwarded back my complaint. Oh, here it is. It's 11, so I don't mind saying his name. Admiral Halsey took my complaint to him and then just forwarded back down to Naval Special Warfare Command for action. So if you go to the next enclosure where this is the response to my complaint to the 3-star, he just takes it and he sends it back down to Naval Special Warfare. So he, essentially pulls himself from having to get involved in this, probably because his lawyers are like, hey, this is all lies and sideways shit. You don't want to get involved. So the next enclosure, Brent, is the response from the 3-star Admiral Halsey sending my complaint back down to Naval Special Warfare. So it just became a closed loop thing where it wouldn't go any higher. Again, this is all protecting the chief of naval operations and the Secretary of the Navy. So now we get to enclosure 12, and this is the most poetic part of the whole, happenings, because on November 7th, 2022, which pop quiz, Brent, what was November 7th, 2022?
November 7th, 2022?
Yeah. That was the day of the midterm election.
Oh, dude, I am not a political guy, man.
Yeah, but so the day, but that's why it's poetic. It's hilarious. The day of the election that I was supposed to retire by June 24, could have retired January, and could have resigned. I attempted to resign multiple times. They told me that I have show cause hearings. So, and they initiated on the day of the elections that I would have ran in, initiated administrative proceedings requiring Lieutenant SCHWARZE'S to show cause for attention in the naval service before a board of inquiry. Lieutenant SCHWARZE'S will hereafter be referred to as respondent. So I'm no longer a Navy SEAL. I'm just a respondent defense. But it's really funny if you think about what that word is. I have to show cause for attention. Mind you, I've been in the Navy for over 21 years at this point. I've attempted to resign or separate 6 times at this point. I haven't been an operator on the gun line since April of 2020. Meanwhile, I still hold down one of those 8 spots where those navigators for the undersea missions operate and do things. They don't get somebody into that unit. They don't get another dude to backfill me until I'm off of that bench. So on November 7th, 2022, they're like, hey, you have to go to trial. And essentially at that point, I can say, hey, just have the trial without me. I'm going to make a statement for the trial, or I'm going to, I request to be at the trial. Guess what I said?
You'll be there.
I said, hell yeah, I'm going to fucking be there. I can't wait for a trial. You mean I get to have, some sort of representation. It's going to be some sort of due process for the first time in this whole thing. I look forward to a trial. Thank God Almighty. So you get to have a trial. It's called a board of inquiry, but it's a trial. The only thing that's different is instead of like a judge and a jury, you have 3 senior ranking military officers. And one of them has to be from your community, which I was petrified for because the Naval Special Warfare, if you look at all the other falsified documents, had completely destroyed my reputation within the community. So I was like, there's no way I'm going to get a fair shake at a board of inquiry, but it's a vote. It is a vote. So it's there's 3 senior officers. It's a 2-to-1, win, or there's a tiebreaker of a senior guy, but it is at least there's a due process and a vote. So I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to trial. So if you remember back to A Few Good Men, where they stacked the case with the lawyer that had never done a case before, you can't even make this up. My defense attorney is a brand new lieutenant junior grade in the Navy. They signed me a dude who had never done a BOI before. You can't make this up. I swear to God. The guy who's like, oh, I'm here to help you out, Lieutenant SCHWARZE'S, with your, the most important thing that's going to happen in your entire life. Oh, cool, bro. How many of these have you done before? Actually, never. I've never. I've been out of law school for 3 months. Meanwhile, the prosecutors have like 4 or 5, a team of like, lieutenants, a lieutenant commander, a couple of JGs, as they're like, bag carriers. I got 1 JG, which means he's been in the military between 2 and 4 years. Actually, I got nothing but love for him. His name's Matt. I don't want to say his last name, but he was phenomenal. It's hilarious that they gave me a dude who had never done this before. But we also filed in the next enclosure, legally, by your right, in enclosure 13, you are afforded the right to retain your own individual military counsel. This is also really important because it's illegal what they did. So I requested to have these other, not more competent than Matt, but more seasoned lawyers help represent me. And the military has to process these. Like it's per like the JAG manual. Like if these are submitted in time, they have to allow these to happen. So, and both of these dudes were contacted and they both said, yes, we just need the order to be written. We're happy to go and do this case. The Navy would not allow these guys to be contacted, so they didn't get to step up. Again, it doesn't turn out to be a big thing in the grand schemes, but it's illegal that the military, stymied a competent counsel for this matter. And again, this will be part of the, a hearing or a trial later on. So it's important to note that my defense rights were again hindered, and had the trial not gone the way it did, it probably would have been nullified later on because you can't keep somebody from getting lawyers, right? All right, so now finally, like, thank God, the cliffhanger that we've all been waiting for. Let's go to enclosure 14. So, Judgment Day comes. We have this trial. We expect it to go like 3 days. You heard me read at the beginning of the podcast. There's thousands of documents, evidence, videos. Spoiler alert: the prosecutors had no witnesses against me because I didn't do anything wrong. But they had all these documents from all over the place. 1,700 pages of documents. What it really came, I had like a few character witnesses from my time in undersea. In the Marines, but I did have my lawyers chime in, the ones who were on the ground in Minnesota. And when I say my lawyers, I mean they were military officers that are, from multiple branches of services that were objective, not like on, Team SCHWARZE'S for Congress or anybody else. They were just military people who were prior military officers. Some of the military officer lawyers, they're like, one of them phoned in to the trial. He's like, this is so sideways. Lieutenant SCHWARZE'S was doing everything by the books here. The Navy actually was giving him unlawful orders because this committee was being run by somebody else. He never filed in Minnesota. Other people were doing his work. All of his statements, they were close to the line, but we all heard them. They were on the right side of the line. He never made any derogatory statements about anybody. And yes, we're all pissed off about how, Afghanistan was an objective failure. A Lance Corporal could have driven, written a better withdrawal plan on a napkin and drunk at a bar at 2:30 in the morning. But he didn't say that. He's like, his remarks were always just about policy. And that's what I did. My remarks were never personal. So you're getting down to the good stuff now. But after, 10 hours of hearing, all these people, I spoke for about 2 hours under oath, which I'm happy to do again at any moment, as are all the witnesses who spoke down at the this trial, and to a vote of 3-0, which means not even the SEAL who works for the commander, who disavowed my service and pulled my trident, thought I did anything wrong. So this was my trial, and I finally got due process. And again, man, after 2.5 years of meddling, of naval special warfare, doing all they can to carry water for the administration, from recalling me, stealing my leave, the kangaroo court, stealing my trident, which then affects my pays, and my ability to get into other nonprofits and get support from the special operations community, all for this, for a complete innocence, a complete exoneration. But thank God, because I will never forget the day I died that all these guys did these things for me, because these three gentlemen put their careers on the line, essentially saying, they essentially said that this is election meddling. One of them gave me his command coin afterwards. One of them's like, hey, this is the only thing I have left for my buddy, Morgan Luttrell, please, keep up the fight. It's I will never forget what these guys did. The other one was actually the new staff officer for that same Commodore who screwed me over. Another submarine guy. He's like, hey, there's no burden. There's no proof of any of this. So his career is probably on the line. Luckily, thank goodness, Senator Kramer's office is now looking after all three of these guys' careers, so they don't get just hammered because they did the right thing, actually had moral courage. I mean, can you imagine that? To have two of those three dudes, their reporting seniors was either the Commodore in charge of them who screwed me over, or the commander of naval special warfare. And they essentially said that all the shit that they did was bullshit, and everything I did was, it's hard not to, because the evidence was there, but they still took that's the true moral courage that they exude to do that. Real briefly, if you wouldn't mind pulling up, article or enclosure 15, that's the one I read at the very beginning.
Yeah, I just want to point this out, because this is so powerful right here, right? Yeah. So it's like you got all these charges, and every single one of them says, by a vote of 3-0, the board finds the preponderance of evidence. Now, let me mind you this, in a criminal trial, right? It's proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Right. So preponderance of the evidence is a lower standard to meet than proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
And, the prosecution here couldn't even prove that. They couldn't even get a preponderance of evidence, and which is an incredibly lower standard than proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And here you are, vote 3-0 that this was all BS.
Yeah, on all charges across the board. I went home, I cried. It's funny. So I'll confess to you and all your, 500,000 viewers. During the thing, I was reading where they said I served no combat times, combat service. And then I was reading through all my MECEP and my meritorious recommendations. And I got to Colonel Carrasco had written me a recommendation for MECEP, for the Meritorious Commission Program. And it was hard reading these statements from all these war heroes that are gods to me, you know how he is. He's one of the most respected people that we know, war hero, a man of men. And I'm reading his recommendation, and he solves, it's of my 20 years of leading Marines, I've had the fortunate ability to lead many heroes and warriors. But it is my distinct privilege and honor to recommend Sergeant SCHWARZE'S for the Meritorious Commission Program, because I know that when there's a difficult decision to be made, Sergeant SCHWARZE'S will not hesitate to make a difficult call. And I started crying. I started crying right there in the board, thinking
He's about to retire soon. He's the most, and this is no bullshit, he's the most senior lieutenant colonel in the United States Marine Corps right now.
Yeah, because he's too
Across the
big of a badass warfighter. He would have probably had like four. He would have been like Mattis. I mean, that guy's just a dude. But yeah, so I started crying when I read his recommendation to the board after I just gotten done reading all the because I like, hey board, please, if there's any false official statements that I've ever had, I would like for the prosecutor to present them. It's like crickets, and it's like, well, it's interesting because I have a lot of false official statements, and the senior member of the board is like, well, I'd be interested to hear some of those. So I started reading, that document where they said like I wasn't in combat. I did all those other things. This is after now the lawyers who was on the ground, again, objective, not on my team. They're like, Schwarzy is doing this all right. You idiots are like telling him to do things he's not even legally allowed to do because he can't mess with the campaign, the committee that was started, again, only because you idiots dropped the ball and decided that he couldn't do it only after he was trying to retire and get help from, the Senate's office to retire. This whole thing is so crazy. And now, Naval Special Warfare is going to have to answer the mail. And again, I don't think that they're the politicians. They just lack the moral courage to do the right thing. And that's almost sadder, really. If we can go to the very last enclosure that I think I sent you. It's enclosure 16. So again, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I served with you. I had a lot of good, records. My first 18 and a half.
This is 15. Is this the wrong one? This is enclosure 15. So you to the secretary.
So we can look at that one again. That's just what I read at the very beginning of your podcast to like keep people on the net until this long. 15 is literally, it's, that's where we're at now, where this is now at the Navy, the Secretary of the Navy. He either has to, quadruple stamp, a double stamp and say, all of the evidence you submitted is garbage and you're still a turd, even though the board, completely exonerated you, or he's going to have to say, lie and say, this is the first time ever hearing this because, again, we know that Senator Kramer's office was talking to the Chief of Naval Operations. So certainly when there's hearings and there's Freedom of Information Acts, there's going to be emails, there's going to be transcripts. My BOI it's an audio file. It was like, 10 hours of audio that will get released at some point. That's not going to be held forever. This is all going to just like boomerang now. Like you said at one point, the cover up is always worse than the crime. This cover up on the Navy side, the SecNav side, just ballooned up, and it's going to pop at some point. I'm retired now. I can talk about this. I was honorable. I didn't say a dang word to anybody except my family, who's all just, riding this roller coaster with me. But now that I'm retired, you don't think I'm going to tell everybody about, we had a midterm federal election meddled in by the SecNav and the CNO, a cabinet member for the president, and then the SEAL community, the military apparatus, like revolutions start because of that kind of shit, man. And again, I'm pragmatic. I'm not a tinfoil hat wearing dude. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I have all the documents. It's crazy and it's scary. And that, again, I'm really scared for the future if that's the kind of stuff that's going to happen. If that has been happening, because I only know my own story. I don't know if it's been happening to other people. But can you go to our enclosure 16? It's the last one. Yep. Okay. So this is kind of important to me because I've, 18 and a half years of being, the number one dude at every command I was at. That 2 years during COVID, all the way to when I was trying to retire. All of a sudden I turned into, this guy who is just the worst, right? Bad enough where you could, you keep him retained. And when I say retained, I'm not like saying like retained in the military. Brent, I was in prison a year ago today. The Navy had me in prison on confinement over Easter as a result of that non-judicial punishment. That is unprecedented to ever put a Naval Special Warfare officer in confinement over Easter, away from my family. It's never happened in the history of Naval Special Warfare where we've confined an officer. But it was also during the nomination. It was during the endorsement in Minnesota. So what better way to like keep me from contacting people to let them know what's going on than to like straight Mandela me. But so again, 0 to 18 years, great. 18 to 20 years, the worst dude ever. And then for the last year, I was working for a different flag officer who's the commander of the Naval Surface Group. So I only worked for this guy for a year. But in closing, I would like to read his, encapsulation of my character. It's his character appraisal in the case of Lieutenant Adam SCHWARZE'S. Again, after I had my trident removed now. With prodigious pride and conviction, I humbly offer my most profound and strongest possible endorsement of my shipmate and American hero, Adam SCHWARZE'S. I feel lucky and privileged to have served with the patriot and warrior of Adam's character. Selflessness and integrity. During my short time observing Adam as a U.S. Navy SEAL, he demonstrated the utmost accountability and professionalism and epitomized our Navy ethos, while maintaining the positive attitude and steadfast resiliency required of all naval officers. Adam was assigned to my command for nearly a year until his honorable retirement from the U.S. Navy on 1 March 2023. Despite the circumstances surrounding his assignment to my command, Adam always conducted himself with steadfast poise, dignity, and honor. Throughout his time under my charge, Adam acted with composure and continued drive for service to his country and shipmates. His actions were always above the fray, and he dedicated a deep sense of humility with distinctive character throughout the painful and trying ordeal of defending his integrity and lifetime of service to our great republic. In my 28 years of service to the Navy, I've had the pleasure of serving alongside all branches of the military, to include many members of the SEAL community. While at my command, then Lieutenant SCHWARZE'S continued to live up to the high standards I've come to demand and expect from naval special warfare operators. Leaning on his 20 years of service as both a U.S. Marine and SEAL, upon arrival, Adam immediately inserted himself into my strategic planning team, where he provided expert and well-informed advice to my staff on methodologies and process by which to foster the ongoing development of a more lethal combined joint operating force throughout the Indo-Pacific. I am disappointed that a board made the extraordinary decision to remove Adam's SEAL warfare designator at the very bitter end of a 20 years of faithful service and great personal sacrifice. A successful career that included multiple combat operations against the enemy. What this perplexing decision did not do, on the other hand, was remove a single fiber of Adam's character or enriched value of his service to our nation. Thank you for considering my personal endorsement of Adam SCHWARZE'S. I feel so strongly about Adam's character and service that I would willfully serve alongside him in combat without any trepidation or anxiety. Our nation is safer for Adam's service as a United States Navy SEAL.
That's absolutely profound. That's awesome.
So here we are, man.
That's awesome. I mean, that's amazing. This freaking kills me, man, because, you and I went down range together, and, I mean, there are few, there are no more honorable men than, men of your character. And, I will stand by your side and argue that to my freaking death. And to go through all of this with you, it's just freaking mind blowing, and it's a huge disappointment to see such an unbelievably honorable and awesome warfighter, come to a close in his career like this, right? And I'm honored that you asked me to share your story and get this out, and hopefully right these wrongs right, and get your trident back. I mean, because this is just unbelievable.
Thanks, man. I appreciate your service and your brotherhood, and frankly, part of the fire in me is because I was just taking it right all the way up until when they said I didn't do anything. I was thinking to all of our brothers who either started a pistol. I'm like, I can't take that easy road out. And then our brothers who actually did die, our brother who died in my arms, I'm like, when they discredited my service, they discredited all of your service. Everybody who was in, the first Mardiv, Bravo Company 1-4, all the shit that all those battles, they tried to erase that by erasing my career. That's really how I looked at it. And I will not stop fighting until they put all of our records right on the record books. Everybody who's in 1-4, you deserve accolades forever. So I will not, now that I'm out, I will continue the fight. I also, if you wouldn't mind, I'm starting a team. It's an entity that's going to help, causes. I'm not running in 2024, but I really, I'd like to make a plug for this entity. If people would be so inclined to get involved and join me in the fight, I'm going to read the mission statement. So many of our nation's brothers and sisters in uniform went overseas to fight and protect America's freedoms and values, only to come home and watch our great nation slowly give up those values and our position in this world. We have seen the rise of cancel culture, emboldened enemies abroad, failure to protect our borders, extremism in politics, an attack on our capital, and the destruction and decay of some of America's greatest cities. The political class in this country have failed to keep our nation on a straight path of freedom. Family, economic prosperity, faith, and strength are all going by the wayside. Our mission is to rebuild a stronger America by recentering, by making the priority of the people instead of special interests and agendas. Weak leadership has seeped into every aspect of our nation, including our armed forces, as evident by tonight. The business of people is not getting done. Our mission is to give the government back to the people. So that's what I'm going to be working on. That entity. I sent you over the QR code. All your, I think you've got 500,000 people. If they even wanted to donate, $5 a cup of coffee or less than a gallon of gas, or however much they feel democracy is worth these days, I still think it's worth a lot. But I would really appreciate, the support of, your followers. Number one, I would say, please, share this video, because the truth of election meddling and the use of the military in it is tragic and scary. But number two, if people want to donate, the problem is we don't have enough people getting involved at the center and coming together on issues that everybody can get on board with. We have all these fringes doing all these crazy things, and it's tearing our nation apart. And again, the people aren't being served right now in our government because of all the chaos that, substandard leaders or people are being put into power are doing to our nation. So that's what I'm going to try to help.
Well, that's awesome, brother. All I can say is, we had two decades of global war on terrorism, and there's no shortage of veterans out there now. And honestly, politics, the critical vulnerability here in order to turn these things around is these honorable warfighters like yourself getting in there and making those changes and getting some of these swamp creatures out and replacing them with solid, honorable men like yourself.
Thanks, buddy.
So
I appreciate the words from you.
All right, guys. Well, that is the story of Lieutenant Adam SCHWARZE, a good friend of mine. We served together again in the United States Marine Corps, and he went on and served in the United States Navy as a Navy SEAL and served this nation for 20 years. And just a unbelievable patriot and a warfighter. And I really am grateful for him sharing his time with us today and shining light on some of these, these issues that are going on within the U.S. military and good men like him. And I wish I could say it's an isolated incident, but if you guys have been watching my channel, I've interviewed Major Fred Galvin, United States Marine Corps retired, and you guys saw what his men in MARSOC went through in their incidents in Afghanistan. And unfortunately, these things pop up, and these good honorable men get dragged through the coals for many, many years until they're finally exonerated at the end. And here we got Adam here, exonerated 100%, but yet he still doesn't have his trident back. So Adam, just one more time, man, if you can just plug your organization and where people can donate, and we'll call it quits and wrap this up.
Yeah, it's defending freedom and democracy.
Awesome, brother. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up our little discussion tonight. So don't forget to check out that link. And, if you can, please donate to his organization. And let's get these war fighters into these right seats, right? And change this stuff around. Thanks for watching tonight and have a good night.